The things I hear most from people is that I don't know if I can ever retire.
When you hear the word investor, what comes to mind? Someone wealthy, country clubs, a fancy lifestyle? There's a common misconception that you must be rich to invest. But here's the reality: most investors don't start that way. And you may not even realize that you've already begun to be an investor. Today, we're going to unpack myths and really a lot of misunderstandings around investing and how getting started is a lot more doable than you think. Hello, and welcome to Money on Your Mind from Edelman Financial Engines. I'm Michael Liersch, a behavioral scientist, financial planner, and your chief planning officer at EFE. Thanks for joining us for a conversation about how people are feeling about money, what they're wrestling with, and how financial planning can help you straighten things out. Today, we're talking with Kay Russell, an EFE financial planner. Kay, welcome to Money on Your Mind.
Thank you, Michael. It's great to be here.
Well, Kay, before we get started, we always like to introduce our planners. And with you, I know we've hung out and talked a lot about your passion, especially around the topic of investors or human beings who are looking to put their money to work for them at every level. So those who feel like they don't have a lot of money, all the way to that very experienced investor who knows the tried and true method of putting their money to work for them and how over time that makes such a big difference in their financial lives. What I'd like you to do is just share with us how you came to be a financial planner and why you're so passionate about working with your clients.
How I came to be a financial planner. I started in this industry at a big brokerage firm, taking inbound calls. And it happened to be in 2008 when we were going through the Great Recession. And I was talking to participants of 401ks, and it was a very tough time. I remember reading about the Great Depression in history. I never thought I would experience it. And it felt like that's what I was experiencing because I was talking to participants that had lost their jobs, and because they no longer had income, they lost their home. Their homes were foreclosed upon. And I remember distinctly speaking to one gentleman who said that I've lost my job, I've lost my home, and I've lived with family and friends, and I've run out of places to live, so I'm literally living in my car. And I think that experience cemented in me just how important financial planning and investing was. And so I have dedicated my life to it, and I've been in this industry for 18 years now. I've been with Edelman for 5 years, and I love what I do because I know that I'm making a difference in the lives of people.
Wow, okay. You're like actually making me feel a little emotional here, hearing that story. So I gotta move past that. That's a really intense story, and I think one that a lot of us can relate to. You can tell I can relate to it on a very personal level because I think it happened with a lot of us who are in financial services, working with human beings that are just trying to make ends meet and have all the best intentions and get derailed in their financial plans.
Yeah.
So I'm just so grateful that we get to work together and that you're so passionate about just helping human beings make the best decisions they can within the circumstances they've been put in. So thank you for that. I just want to acknowledge that, Kay.
Thank you so much.
So with that, let's get into the topic at hand. We're going to talk a bit about just this idea of investing at all phases, the goods and the bads, kind of like you shared with us, Kay, in terms of those stories. And within that framework, you and I have had these experiences that when you're in those tough spots, you get out of them. There's a lot of fear around getting started investing. There's a lot of myths that you have to have a lot of money to get started. So I just, within that framework, I'd love you to tell us a little bit about what you're hearing from your clients, especially on that topic, on like what it means to be an investor. Do they consider themselves one? Do they feel like they need lots of money? Or is everyone like, yeah, like micro investing is fun? So can you tell us a little bit about what you hear from your clients?
Yes. So when I'm speaking with prospective clients, sometimes I they'll tell me, I don't have a lot of money and I don't know anything about investing. And, when I dig a little bit deeper, there's this myth that people think that they have to be rich to go through a financial plan or have a financial advisor. And that's just not true. I feel like, it's not the healthy that needs the doctor, it's the sick. And so if you're not financially secure, you're the perfect candidate for financial planning. I know there's a lot of firms out there that you need a minimum of $1 million just to become a client. That's not the case with us at Edelman Financial Engines. And what I tell our prospective clients is that there's three options. After we do the financial plan, I'm going to have a very specific action plan for you, recommendations, and you can either implement it on your own or you can hire somebody else to do it. But at least you know where to go, and so that you can take that step towards improving your financial future.
So, Kay, that's really interesting. And I want to go hit on something that you said that I've seen too. And it's a really popular idea too in behavioral research and science, where people feel like they need to know everything about their goals, their plan, their money before they get professional help. And you likened it to the doctor. There is a circumstance where that happens too in the medical profession, where people like to go to the doctor when they're healthy. And if they're not feeling well, that's when they actually don't like to go to the doctor, because they're afraid, they're fearful that they're going to hear something they don't want to hear. But actually, that's, aside from preventative medicine, that's really the most important time to take action and go. So what do you think's causing this idea that, not only, and then we'll get into some other topics, but where people feel like they need to come to you with a perfect financial life to get your help, rather than acknowledging that it's imperfect and that's exactly the benefit of your advice? What do you think is going on there?
Well, first of all, I understand where they're coming from because, I appreciate the services that I get from those that are in the medical community. And, what we do is very similar, except in a financial way. And, it's not our job to diagnose ourselves. That's why we go to the professionals, so that they can diagnose. That's what they do, so they have the tools and resources to be able to diagnose whatever is wrong. We don't know what to ask because we don't know what we don't know. Or I don't know what I don't know when I go to the doctors. And so that's why they have to do lab work and blood work and x-rays and things like that, using those tools to find out what might be wrong that needs to be fixed. And I tell them, your tax return is like an x-ray. It's going to tell us everything about your income and your deductions and everything. And you might know bits and pieces of the information there, but it reveals a lot more than what is obvious on the surface.
So do you think that's what people are afraid of at the end of the day, that there's some type of information that will be revealed and it'll make them feel badly about themselves or a decision they've made, or there's something like embarrassment or shame in that?
I think so. I mean, it's not always the case. I mean, I feel like a lot of the people, majority of the people, they're just busy. They're busy with lives. They have full-time jobs. They have a family to take care of. So they're just busy. So the planning for finance is kind of put on the back burner. So that's, I think, is the biggest culprit. But also there is that aspect of fear and shame. And, we are naturally, we have a tendency to think negatively. And so the things I hear most from people is that I don't know if I can ever retire. And if that's the mindset, if that's what they're thinking, and if they come and see me and I confirm it, that, then they have to do something about it. And that's intimidating. And so, but it's just like, if I have something going on in my body and there's something I can do to remedy that, I'd want to know. That's why I go see a doctor once a year and make sure I take their directions if there's medicine I need to take. And it's the same thing. If there is something that could be done, and there's so much we could do to improve your situation little by little that could have tremendous impact in, later in life during retirement.
You're very empathetic. Like, how do you make that feel okay? And then what does it sound like to highlight some of those opportunities for someone who's younger or someone who's older, no matter what their wealth level, like especially if they don't feel like they have enough money to invest? What does it sound like to get them over that hump? And maybe what are some of the opportunities you highlight that they can use to get started now, no matter what stage of life they're in?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, Michael, I always try to build a rapport with our clients and learn a lot about them, learning about their families, what their values are, what they want this money to do for them. And in the process, I also share a little bit about my own story, and I'll share that with you now. You mentioned that I was listening to some of the previous podcasts, and Michael, you mentioned that you met your wife in high school. She was your high school sweetheart. I met my husband when I was 19, and we got married 2 years later. So I got married fairly young, and we wanted a big family, so we were blessed with 6 children. And so when they were little, I stayed home, and I was a full-time mom. So I didn't start my career till way, in my mid 30s. And so, for me, investing for retirement didn't even start then, because then we were just treading water, lots of kids, lots of expenses, right? So
I can relate.
yeah, so I mean, it's expensive to raise children, and if I had to do it over again, I wouldn't change a thing. I love my kids, and it's the best thing in the world, but it does cost money. I mean, when I was having children, I wasn't thinking about college expenses or weddings or anything like that. I just thought about how sweet they are, as little babies. So I share that story to let them know that it's never too late. It's never too late. It's like, yes, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is now. And so we can't go back in time, but we can start something today. And so I just encourage them and say, I'm so glad we're talking today. Thank you for coming in. I'm going to do my best to help you. But keep in mind, this is a collaborative effort. We're going to be partners to help you be better financially.
Can you share with us how you highlight, this balance of cash versus putting money to work in an investment plan, a retirement plan? What's your thought there?
If you've never invested before, it can be scary to think about putting all your money in the hands of somebody that you don't know. I try to meet our clients where they're at. If they're extremely fearful, we can do different things. Maybe we don't invest everything. We start with 10%, 20%, 30%, whatever their comfort level is, and do dollar cost average. And what happens is, if you start investing a little bit and you start to see that grow, then it builds some more faith. And so you don't have to dive head first. You can dip your toes in the water and gradually get to your knees and to your waist and so on. To give you an idea, I have a client that has been with me for several years now. And she was in her early 60s, and she was laid off from her job. And so she had all this money that she had saved up through her 401k, her contributions plus match, but it wasn't invested. And so she was very fearful of getting that money invested. And I ran a financial plan for her, and I showed her using a calculator that if we stayed in cash, the money was going to run out in her mid 70s.
Oh, wow.
And so, I didn't have to convince her that was the right thing to do for her to invest. I was able to show her through math. And so we did get her invested, and her, money has grown. But when we first started, she wasn't. She was deathly afraid. Those clients that are very fearful and haven't invested, if we can just show them and get them to that right path so that they can have a better future.
I think there's some people, because they feel they weren't rich, or they're concerned that they'll be embarrassed or feel a sense of shame for not getting started earlier, they actually don't realize they're investing already. Can you point out a few of those examples? And I know you do this with your clients. You're like, you're already an investor.
Right.
So, there's not much to be afraid of. Like, go back and look at how that's done for you. Can you give an example or two of where people are actually invested already and may not even realize it?
Sure. A lot of people they're very, lucky to be working for a company that offers a 401k. And maybe they were auto enrolled, or they enrolled on their own, but they're consistently investing in their retirement through their 401k contributions. Plus, they may be getting a match from their company. They may be getting RSUs or, stock options. So these are some if you work for a company that offers these things, that's a great thing, and you certainly participate on it. But you can also invest outside of that as well.
So that's really interesting. And we even had a recent topic on health savings accounts, HSAs.
Hmm.
And we had listeners tell us that they didn't even realize a health savings account was a potential investment plan for their future. They thought it was actually just cash that was sitting there. I appreciate you highlighting that.
Hmm.
So let's move to very quickly to two questions everyone loves. The biggest mistakes you see clients make, and one big mistake, and then one action they should take right now. So I'm going to ask them so you can be very procedural here. So what is one of the biggest mistakes you're seeing clients make right now, Kay?
The biggest mistake I see is people hearing what's going on in the news and being afraid of what may happen in the market and going in cash. We had some couple people that did that earlier this year, and now, and since then they've come back, but they regret having done that, because not only did they sell at the wrong time, but they also bought back at the wrong time too. And hopefully this time they stay. But I think that's a big mistake, especially for long-term investing, such as for retirement. There's no way you can time the market. You have to get it right two different times. You can't, without a crystal ball, you can't predict when to sell and when to buy. And so if you're in a diversified portfolio, it's best to just stay put.
How about what's one thing all clients should be doing, or all listeners actually should be taking advantage of or doing right now?
So I'm going to piggyback on the first episode you did with Ron Sisk. And he said, save early, save often, save until it hurts, and save more. And I'm going to tweak that a little bit and say, after you've saved, and if you have the means to be able to do so, I would say invest. So invest early, invest often, invest when it hurts.
Wow, okay, I love it. And we'll have to send this one to Ron, give him a preview before it's even public and live. So he knows you've bootstrapped off of his sage advice and made it even broader and more expansive. So thank you for that, Kay. All right. Well, you heard it here first. And that's everything we have for you today. This has been Money on Your Mind. A big thanks to financial planner Kay Russell for joining me. And we'll be back next Wednesday with a new episode. Subscribe to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube so you don't miss it. And we'd appreciate it if you left us a rating too. I'm Michael Liersch from Edelman Financial Engines. Talk to you next time.